The pandemic is putting a new spin on an old political tradition in the United States. But still, Joe Biden has something this morning that he has wanted for much of his long political life: the Democrats' nomination for president. And like everything at the party's national convention, his formal nomination last night had a new look.
Well, thank you very, very much. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. It means the world to me and my family.
No convention stage for that big moment because of COVID-19, but Biden did get a mini balloon drop thanks to his family. He accepted the nomination in a live stream from a Delaware school as Democrats watched at home and cheered along online. That's our starting point for our next conversation this morning. Alex Panetta, our CBC News Washington correspondent. I'm always happy for a moment or two to talk with Alex. So great to see you this morning, Alex. Thanks for coming in on this.
Good seeing you too.
And why don't we start with Joe Biden? That moment last night and his formal speech to come on Thursday, but being the official nominee for the Democrats, really a moment that he has been waiting for and working toward for some 50 years. Talk a little bit more about that, if you would.
Well, Joe Biden likes to tell stories himself. He kind of tells deprecating stories about how he's wanted the presidency since he was a little kid. And it's kind of funny that you just imagine going back and telling this young Joe Biden, you're going to accept the nomination on screens using technology that currently only exists on the TV show Star Trek. And you'll be doing it on a screen from a remote location in a library. And it's just, I thought it was an interesting moment. Obviously a lot of production effort went into this thing. And it was an interesting spin, an interesting way to see people watching on prime time an event that usually I've seen in arenas before. I've covered the last two conventions, and usually what it is it's a pretty crowded arena with people from each state rolling off the roll call and announcing how many delegates from their state are going to the eventual nominee, and people cheer, and it's a fun event. But it's not as visually interesting as it was yesterday, where you had all these scenes from places as diverse as American Samoa and Rhode Island. You actually had someone hawking and promoting Rhode Island calamari from a beach in the Rhode Island roll call. So it was definitely an interesting moment.
We saw in some of these pictures, I mean, we're looking now as you speak, Alex, at the political life, his boys, Joe Biden. His wife was very prominent last night. We saw her alongside as he accepted the nomination. The wife of the candidate always has the job of humanizing the candidate, but Jill Biden, in talking about her husband's character, his humanity, his empathy, this has been really highlighted, it seems, in Biden's case more than usual. Why is that aspect so important this time?
So they're obviously trying to strike a contrast with President Trump, especially at a moment in American history that calls for empathy. A lot of people are suffering. And while they obviously see the human ability to connect with others and care about others, that's an important issue, and this is essentially a Trump card, not for Trump, but for Biden. But there's another issue at play here. Democrats, to a certain extent, are happy to have this election be about Donald Trump. They think that the president's negative ratings are high, his favorables are low, and if they keep the camera on him, he'll probably lose and they'll win. But there's one thing that they like to address. Now, I was driving through Wisconsin yesterday, rural Wisconsin. I've driven through Milwaukee. I haven't seen a single Joe Biden sign. I've seen dozens of Donald Trump signs, and the only non-Donald Trump sign I've seen is a sign that said, "Dump Trump." There's no references to Biden anywhere. So I think to a certain extent the campaign's fine with that, but they'd like people to know the nominee a little bit better, to see his human qualities. And one of the things they did, and one of the things Jill Biden did, is to talk about the loss of Biden's children. One child in the 1970s and another child, Bo, a couple of years ago to cancer. And she speaks about recovering from that. Let's have a listen to the clip.
You know, motherhood came to me in a way I never expected. I fell in love with a man and two little boys standing in the wreckage of unthinkable loss, mourning a wife and mother, a daughter and sister. I never imagined at the age of 26 I would be asking myself, how do you make a broken family whole? The same way you make a nation whole. With love and understanding, and with small acts of kindness.
So that was one of the highlights of her speech last night. Can we turn to tonight for a moment, Alex, because we're going to hear from Barack Obama tonight. He delivers the keynote. But we're also going to hear from Hillary Clinton, who was 4 years ago accepting the nomination. Is this going to be, I mean, what are you anticipating from her? An I told you so speech? Anything of that nature?
I think there might be a fair bit of "I told you so." Hillary Clinton's persona on Twitter lately has actually been more entertaining than I've ever seen her. Occasionally, she'll make a joke about some of the stranger, zanier moments of the Trump presidency, and I think she'll connect it to the campaign 4 years ago. The other thing we'll do tonight is hear from Kamala Harris, who's making an address at the convention, and I think it'll be interesting there because she's got two audiences, I think, tonight. On the one hand, a general public, a persuadable public in the center of the political spectrum, but also Democratic voters, African-American voters, who may be a little bit skeptical about her. I was visiting North Milwaukee a couple of days ago, speaking with people, and I can say pretty unequivocally, based on that polling data and polling data I've seen and conversations I've had, that people like her, but they're not quite as fond of her, and there's a little bit more controversy over her than over, say, Barack Obama. So there's no guarantee that she'll drive the same turnout that Obama did 8 and 12 years ago. So that's one thing that you'll probably be seeing, is her talking about maybe her record as a prosecutor and connecting that to the modern Democratic Party, which is, talking about defunding the police.
Okay. So her history-making moment as she accepts the vice presidential nomination coming up tonight. Can I just ask, I mean, as you're there in Milwaukee, as you're talking to people, the polls tell us, Alex, that nationally Joe Biden does have a lead over Donald Trump at this point. But perhaps Hillary Clinton's presence as part of the program tonight is going to remind them they've been there before. So as you talk to people, I mean, do they feel they still at this point have cause to be nervous?
I think Democrats are genetically programmed to be nervous. And Barack Obama called members of his party bedwetters. But I think that the Biden campaign actually wants people to stay on their toes. They don't want to have people thinking it's in the bag. So nervousness is probably not a bad thing at this point. One thing I will say, though, is this race has been far more stable than the Hillary Clinton Donald Trump race. If you look at polling averages, I mean, the Trump Clinton averages kind of looked like they were zigzagging back and forth over a period of months. The Biden Trump averages look like two relatively flat lines and quite far from each other. Biden's had a lead for months and months and months. So the race could change. It definitely could change, and especially on the state level, because this thing obviously is played in swing states, and maybe one or two could slip away. Now he seems to have a pretty steady lead.